James starts off his letter with a familiar phrase for many of us. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds. I hate this verse, man. I grew up in church and I heard this verse a lot preached and talked about whenever you're at your worst, when everything is coming at you, when everything's attacking you, when the night seems darkest, when you're at these trials of your life, consider them pure joy. But Peter Davids, Canadian New Testament scholar and commentator, says this, that the Christians that James was addressing, they were facing many trials of many kinds, but these were not severe persecutions, but rather low-level persecutions, social rejections, boycotts, all because these Christians were trying to bear the image of Christ. In their relationship to each other, in their conversations, and in their actions with one another, they were trying to be like Jesus. They were trying to demonstrate Jesus. They were trying to be a mirror of Jesus' relationship that he has given us with one another. They faced all kinds of rejection, all kinds of we're going to say low-level persecution, inconveniences. They had to work a little harder at the market. They had to do all of these things that were just really inconvenient, this low-level persecution. And so with that in mind, he continues and he says, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature. Everyone say mature. I hate that word too. And complete, not lacking anything. Whenever I was a kid, some of this won't surprise any of you, but whenever I was young, I used to love to annoy my friends. There was a joy that took place in my heart. Some of you won't get this reference, and that's okay. Just means you were born too late in life. Well, we used to go places and be in a van with all my friends, and a few of us would be in the back of the van, and we'd start singing a song. This is the song that never ends. Yes, it goes on and on, my friends. Some people not knowing what it was, and they'll continue singing it forever just because it is the song that never... Yeah, okay, it's enough. I get it. I saw your eyes roll back in your head. This was the best song in the world because it only took like one or two times and everybody else hated us, right? Like we got under their skin. It wasn't just a mild inconvenience at that point. It was a major life-altering situation where parents had to get involved. Youth pastors were pulling people apart, stopping fist fights. It was frustrating. My kids now do that to me. The new song is, "What Does the Fox Say?" Yeah, I hate it. Oh, man. Ding, 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 ding. You're annoying. It's terrible. But if you've ever been to camp with me, it's one of the things that I love doing. I actually have a playlist on my phone through Spotify, and it says annoying songs to wake people up with. And if you've ever been to camp with me, that starts playing around 5:30 or 6 a.m. just so everyone can start their day off really angry, like really inviting the presence of the Lord to that perseverance, to be forgiving and patient, And this Wednesday, when school starts for the very first time, that playlist is going to be blaring in my house, and my kids, I'm going to say, listen, this is an opportunity for Jesus to work in your life. You can use that, feel free. But I noticed something about myself. I always want to have the perfect friend, and I never want to be the perfect friend. Like, I want people around me to be patient with me. I want people around me to listen to me. I want people around me to understand me, to overlook my bad habits, to treat me with grace, to overlook my inconveniences that I am causing them. I want those people around me, but then suddenly I realize that I'm somebody else's annoying friend, and so are you. Your spouse is going to annoy you. Your kids are going to frustrate you and feel like an inconvenience at times. Your parents are going to disappoint you. Your best friend is going to let you down, and you are going to do the exact same thing to them. Young people in the room, let me tell you this. It's easy to sit there and think that, well, once a failure in a relationship happens, or once somebody starts annoying me, the relationship is over. Let me tell you here right now, that's part of being in a relationship. Because when those annoyances start to stack on one another, we start to do a couple things. And the first one that we start to do is neglect the relationship. Now, I know that you guys didn't show up here today needing a sermon to know that relationships are important. Am I right? You didn't need to come here and listen to me that, yeah, I know my relationship with my wife or my husband is important. I know that my relationship with my kids or my family, I know those are important. You don't need me to tell you that. The problem is that when we start neglecting parts of our relationship with people, neglect rarely feels like neglect when it's happening. It rarely feels like neglect when it's happening. It reminds me of whenever I got my license, I was 16 years old. I had an 86 Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme, and that thing could fly. And I loved it. And we had this road going past our house. It had a 308 in it, and it was amazing. We had a road going to our house, and it was it was like 2 miles of just straight, no curves, no hills. It was amazing. And I had seen in the movies, because I had watched movies before, I had seen this really cool move that you can do in a car, and that's if you move your wheel like this real quick, you can kind of fishtail a little bit, right? You say, you know what I'm talking about? No, some of you are like, would never do that. And so one day I was driving home at 16, and I was like, man, I want to see if I can fishtail like they do. And so like I'm kind of like testing it a little bit, testing the waters, checking it out to see. And I turned my wheel just enough, and I go, straight. And I was like, oh, I'm really cool. I just turned it a little bit, fishtailed just a little bit. The next day, I was driving back that same road, and I saw that same spot, and I saw my tire tracks that for probably 100 feet was where I was actually like, and then turning back. But it only felt like a little bit. It didn't feel like I was losing control whenever I was there. It didn't feel like anything was happening while I was there, but the tire tracks told a different story. And I think a lot of times that's our relationship. The patterns are the tracks that our tires leave in our relationship. And your patterns are telling you what your relationship has been doing and where it's going. See, neglect happens when once in a while becomes the pattern, when it becomes more often. Neglect happens whenever what used to just be a little bit, or what used to be every once in a while, starts to happen more frequently. And neglect matters because we no longer ignore the warning lights. That check engine light that pops on, we can easily just cover it up. We can easily just tune it out rather than paying attention to it. And the longer that warning light is on, the longer the neglect takes place, the longer those things happen, the more difficult it is to recognize the relationship we once had. So the question isn't, how do I become the kind of person who doesn't neglect my relationship? Again, you don't need to hear a sermon on that. You know not to neglect your relationships. But the truth is, what we start neglecting, we eventually stop enjoying. And there's a lot of us today who started neglecting the very relationships that God has given us to demonstrate His love, to reflect His image, just like the people that James was writing to. Their job was to reflect His image, and over time they started getting persecuted, these little mild inconveniences, and some of them more than just mild. Some of them were reoccurring, and they became a pattern and a way of life, and it becomes easy to start neglecting that because small annoyances end up adding up. And maybe it's a greater persecution, or maybe it's because we're exhausted, or maybe it's because we've been around for a while. But how do we become someone who, as James says, lets perseverance finish the work that God begins in our life so that we may be mature and complete, not lacking anything? What are you going to do the next time you see a warning light? A warning light on the dashboard of your marriage because the socks are on the floor again when they're not in the hamper. The annoyance in your friendship because your friend has very poor taste in music, yet they're always the one in control of the radio. The frustration building towards our children because you told them to be ready at 9:30 because we're walking out the door, and at 9:40 you say, "Where are you?" And they say, "I'm almost ready." That one hit close to home, I'm sorry. But there's those annoyances that kind of begin to take us, begin to move us beyond where we want to be. So what do? See, the earlier you notice neglect, the easier it is to reinvest. So today during this message, we're going to be looking at a passage in Song of Solomon. If you want to turn there, it'd be a good time. I know no good marriage series is complete without the book of Song of Solomon being talked about, but unfortunately this isn't one that you might want to hear, but this is one that I feel today we need to hear. And so Song of Solomon or Song of Songs, it might be that in your scripture. We're going to be in chapter 2, verses 15 through 16, or 14 through 16. And here's what it says. This couple who's in love is talking to one another. And here's what the young man says. "My dove is hiding behind the rocks, behind the outcrop of the cliff. Let me see her face. Let me hear her voice. Aw. For your voice is pleasant and your face is lovely." Write that down, some of you. You guys need to say that to somebody today. And then it's beautiful, right? And then the young lady ruins it by talking. Hang on. She starts talking about these foxes. Like he's trying to be romantic here for a second, and then she starts talking about, she says, "Hey, hang on, but first I got a honey-do list for you. Catch all the foxes, those little foxes, before they ruin the vineyard of love. For the grapevines are blossoming." And then in verse 16 it says, "My beloved is mine, and I am his. He browses among the lilies." Today, we're going to talk about these three biblical principles, these three things that we can take into our relationships no matter where you are in your relationship, no matter what you've been doing, no matter what kind of relationship that you're in. If you are in a relationship that you want to mirror that of Christ Jesus in our life that he gave to us, if you want to be an image bearer to the world around you, this is for you. It has to do with marriages, but it also has to do with our friendships, and it has to do with our family relationships. And so I want you to pay attention, because these three things are three biblical things that we can do in all of our relationship. And they're going to be up here. If you're a note taker and you like to fill in the blanks, get ready, because you're going to be filling in these blanks. Are you ready? And the first one that we're going to take out of Song of Solomon is this: find the foxes. Here's a man who's in love with this lady, and he's expressing his love. All I want to be is with you. He wants to hear her voice. He wants to see her face. He wants to spend time with her. But before this happens, she starts talking about these foxes. And back then, foxes were notorious in the ancient world for damaging vineyards, which surprised the heck out of me. If you gave me a Family Feud questionnaire, foxes on things that can destroy your vineyard would not be in my top 25. But foxes destroyed vineyards, and they did it in the way that you think foxes might destroy anything, and that is very sly, very sneaky. They were a dangerous problem to have because they would sneak in and start causing damage to the vineyard, but then they would sneak out before even a lot of people recognized them. They cause damage to the garden. They cause damage to the vineyard. And in this passage, this vineyard is the relationship. And how many foxes do we have in our relationship that sneak in and sneak out with it and start causing damage, but we're trying to chase them off? That's the other thing about foxes, is they are super sneaky, and you chase them off. They're skittish. They get out of there. As soon as you confront them, they're gone. But they're never really gone. They always try to come back. They're easy to run off, but they seem to return real easy. And even the best relationships have potentially destructive problems. These little foxes that run around in our relationships. A phone that gets more attention than my spouse. A joke that slowly becomes disrespect. A conversation that keeps getting postponed. A habit of saying, "I'm fine," when I'm not. A habit of spending and saying you spent something else or you didn't spend it. A lack of curiosity, always being too busy, never saying please or thank you, never asking, but how are you really doing? See, when we stop spending some of those real times, these are those little pesky foxes that come into our life, and they're never anything that's huge, they're never anything that's big, and whenever you talk about them, they seem to disappear real quick, but they always seem to come back and cause issues. And these little foxes make everything seem like a problem, or even worse, we stop paying attention because we know the little foxes are going to be there. We don't even recognize the damage that they're doing. Ecclesiastes 10 uses a different animal, and he says, as dead flies cause even a bottle of perfume to stink, so foolishness spoils great wisdom and honor. So what would it look like in our relationships if we started playing the pay attention game? What if we became a fox finder? What if we became a fox finder? Where we started asking questions to find the foxes in our relationships. Is there anything about our relationship that I've stopped doing? Is there something that you feel like I'm not hearing you say? What do you wish we did more often? What is something that you miss about what our relationship used to be? When do you feel most connected to me? When do you feel most distant? What is something that I've stopped doing that really used to mean a lot to you? What am I not noticing? See, when we start asking those questions, we're looking for the foxes. We start paying attention to the other things around us. We pay attention to the relationship that we're cultivating together, this vineyard of love, this vineyard of a relationship that keeps us as Christ bearers, that keeps us as image bearers. And that works whether you're married or not. If you're dating, pay attention to the little things. If you're 14 years old right now, pay attention to the things that your friends and family do now. Start paying attention to the small things. Become a fox finder, the things that cause annoyances in relationships because they stack up and they matter. Because when you're practicing relational attentiveness now, when you're paying attention to relational attentiveness now, you're practicing for relational intention in the future. And when we start paying attention, we start finding things that remind us of the Father. We start seeing things that the foxes are doing that remind us of the image of the Father that we're trying to bear. We find them doing something right. We find our kids being kind or engaging in conversation. We find them trying. We find ourselves laughing. We find us falling in love all over again with the relationship that we had. And that goes whether you've been married for 55 years or 5 months. That goes if you're a parent and a child relationship right now, or if you're estranged from your in-laws. Find those moments where your spouse says something that reveals what's happening under the surface. You start finding things. But it's not just good enough to find the foxes. There's a word in there that's on the next one, and it's to catch the foxes. She tells him, she says, go catch the foxes. A couple must be determined and tenacious in their commitment to catch these little foxes in their life. The word catch is an imperative word. It's a command from the Lord, and the warning isn't your vineyard's dying. It's there's something that needs your attention. Hopefully you notice something. That's why those dashboard lights come on. They show up and they don't say your engine just exploded. It's too late at that point. But when those lights come on, it means, hey, I need you to pay attention to something. And you start looking for it, and you start driving different, and you start engaging different because you know something's going on in your life. It says catch them, not just notice them. And here's what that does. The word, that catch word, it means that your vineyard is worth protecting. It means that your love is worth protecting. It means that your encouragement is worth protecting. It means that your relationship with your son or your friend or your parent is worth protecting. Proverbs 24 says it like this. I walked by the field of a lazy person, the vineyard of one with no common sense. And I saw it was overgrown with nettles and covered with weeds, and its walls were broken down. Guys, can I just tell you, it is no spiritual gift to notice things that are wrong. Any of us can be a complainer. It's not a spiritual gift to recognize when things aren't as they should be and complain about it. Anybody with me? It's easy to do that kind of stuff, but that's not a spiritual gift. It doesn't just say notice things, because noticing things with no application is just observation. I don't want to just observe that I got foxes in my vineyard. I don't want to just observe that there's warning lights all over. That I don't want to just know that my check engine light. We need to take action on that. The healthiest relationships aren't made up of people who have no problems. They're made up of people who pay attention to the little things before they become big problems and make a plan to get rid of them. Catch the foxes. Pay attention to the people you love. There's little foxes everywhere. Deal with them while they're little. Don't ask whose fault is it. Ask what can we do about this. That's a completely different posture in the relationship. Not you need to change, which some of us are really good at saying. Not I guess I'll tolerate it and not pay any more attention. But this is something that happens between us. Let's figure out what's going on and do something about it. If the fox is we don't spend enough time together anymore, don't just say we need to spend more time together. Make a plan. One night a week, 30 minutes, our phones locked in a safe somewhere. If the fox is we don't talk anymore, make a plan. 10 minutes every night where we ask real questions. If the fox is I don't want to go, I don't know what's going on in my son's life, let's get breakfast together. Make a plan. Every Saturday morning, we're going to do something. If the fox is I've stopped encouraging my spouse, catch them doing something good every single day and tell them. That's what catching the foxes looks like. You don't just identify them, you pursue them. See, when we are paying attention enough, we see relationship as worth fighting for. And you'll begin to catch glimpses of the Father in your relationship where you used to see foxes. Where you used to see only problems, only things that caused annoyance and destruction. Where you used to see some of those things. When we start paying attention, we start looking differently. We start catching the ones that we love doing things that reminds us of why we fell in love with them. And then the third one is cultivate what the foxes want. Can I tell you a secret? Foxes don't like to go into dead vineyards. The reason the foxes are there is because the vineyard has something that they want. The vineyard has something that they're seeking, that they're receiving from the vineyard because it's a healthy vineyard. In fact, you could tell the health of the vineyard by the presence of the fox. And if there aren't things in your relationship with somebody, with your kids or with your spouse or with your friends or with your family, if they're not things that annoy you about each other, my guess is it might not be a healthy relationship anyways. You don't always feel your way back into a healthy relationship, but sometimes you act your way back into healthy feelings. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because the testing of your faith produces perseverance. There's nothing special about somebody who loves somebody who always loves them. It's whenever there's disagreement. It's whenever there's frustration. It's when there's annoyances. It's when those things, our perseverance gets tested. Any of you guys in here an only child? Not going to admit it, are you? I love it. But those only child, you got that only child syndrome, and it's not your fault, but you didn't grow up you might have had to play with your cousins or something like that, but you didn't grow up with a sibling that was in your room that swore up and down that toy was their toy and that mom gave it to them, and then you're about to come to blows over it. This idea of sharing, there's things that you just don't know. And that's okay, because we don't know what we don't know. But that's what relationships give us this opportunity to do, to be persistent in our love and in our chasing for one another. Invest in what God says is good. I'm a firm believer in family. And family is the first place that God designed His presence to be revealed, for us to be image bearers in the family, to demonstrate His love, not just in the good times, not just in the terrible times, but in the times of mild annoyance, in the times of frustration, in the times of I've told you 75 times and I don't want to say it again. Those things that end up wearing on us to where we either just get so upset and make a small thing a big thing, or we just say whatever and begin neglecting that relationship. I can't change them, just going to ignore it. We cannot demand a harvest from a field we refuse to cultivate. Healthy relationships aren't built around me and you. They're built around we. They're built around God's presence. They're built around God's demonstration of relationship in our world. Our relationships are images of God's relationship with us. And we hear John 15, there's no greater love than someone who lays down his life for a friend, and we don't want to. We love it. We sit there and say, like, I'd lay down my life for you, but don't ask me to hand you the playlist. You're not allowed to pick the movie anymore. But these mild annoyances that keep coming up, they're frustrating to me. I'd lay down my life for you, but man, I don't like you right now. What would happen if we started to flip that a little bit in our relationships? Instead of why don't you ever, what can we start doing together? Instead of you're not making time for me, how do we protect time for us? We don't talk anymore. I got a book at Half Price Books, and it's filled with 3,000 questions. Let's ask each other this over the next 4 months. We've lost something. Let's start cultivating it again. See, what happens when we look at annoyance as opportunity? We become mature in our love. What are the things that are annoying you about the people that you love in your life? What are the things that aren't interruptions to our spiritual growth necessarily, but slowly they can become that? James says those things, consider those things pure joy as we face trials of many kinds. Some of the greatest tests of our faith are going to happen in church and in our family. Or those mild inconveniences, or those things that frustrate us about somebody else, the things that somebody else does, those are the things that we have a chance to mature our faith and love and our image bearing of Jesus Christ. Because relationships test our faith. They don't just test our faith, but they mature our faith if we allow Christ in them. Relationships require us to practice the things that Jesus wants to produce in us: patience, kindness, humility, selflessness, perseverance, grace, listening, understanding, hard work, dedication. These are things that God wants to produce in us. So what would happen if we changed the question? So maybe the next time your spouse does something that drives you crazy, instead of asking, why do they always do this? We ask, God, what are you trying to grow in me through this? When your teenager starts pushing your buttons, instead of asking, how do I get them to stop? Ask, how can I respond in a way that helps them become more like Jesus? Instead of immediately withdrawing, it's no use in talking to you. What would spiritual maturity look like in that moment? We start asking different questions. When your parents frustrate you, when your coworkers annoy you, when your friends respond in a way that you hope they wouldn't, when your spouse leaves the cabinet door open for the 47,000th time, and you have to shut it. Maybe the question isn't, how do I get them to change? Maybe the question is, God, what are you inviting me to practice today? Maybe he's trying to finish his work in you so you can become mature and complete, not lacking anything. It's about becoming people who are mature enough to love an imperfect people. And here's the beauty of it. When we start doing that as a family, when we start demonstrating those things as a family, and our kids see that, doing that to one another, and they see their aunts and uncles and their grandparents doing that, forgiving those small things, engaging when they could pull back, when they start seeing that, it begins to change their relationship because they see an image bearer of who Christ is in our life. And then they get to go out into their schools. And they get to go out and forgive friends. And they get to go out into their middle school relationships and say, you know what? That's not going to end our friendship because that's worth more than this. I'm going to allow faults. I'm going to ask God, what do you want me to do? We're going to close today with something a little bit. Lindsay, if you want to go grab the kids and have them come on over. And Dave, if you want to come on up. We're going to do something a little bit different as we have our kids that are going back into schools. And our kids need to see a demonstration just like James was writing. They need to see a demonstration of these Christ-bearing images, these Christ-bearing relationships in front of them. And that's both here in the church, and that's in your home, and that's on the playground. They need to see these images of a relationship that Christ is calling us to. Because they're going to go back into a school, they're going to go back into a world that doesn't have those same images. That the second someone's wrong, that the second someone becomes annoying, that the second that someone says something they shouldn't, it's like we can't be friends anymore. And this relationship that God has given us becomes distorted in their mind. They've seen marriages broken up over the smallest things. They've seen friends become enemies over words that were said. They've seen all of the things. But we get the opportunity to be Christ bearers, image bearers of Jesus Christ before them.